Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What's up? Welcome to episode 6 or 68 of the Flip Side podcast. How are you doing? How's it going? We'll come back to those questions in Noah's rant. That's why I asked them. I will save my rant on those two questions for the end of the episode. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? Hold back the rant till the end. It's hard to do, but I'm working on it. Well, I hope you're doing well this fine spring day. It snowed in Michigan this week. Turned to rain, but nothing like getting snow in the middle of April. It's awesome. Love that about Michigan. Not going to open the mailbag yet today because the topic we are jumping into is sort of like the mailbag. I'm going to be responding to a few social media posts that were sent my way, but we do have a mailbag, and the email is podcast@beyondthebattle.net. Would love to hear from you, comments about the show, questions you have that you might want me to interact with. And I threw the question out there last episode: what is the most confusing or unsettling part of the Bible for you? So thanks to those who have already emailed in, but I'm going to wait to get a few more responses until we talk about that on the show. So today what we're going to do is just jump right into our topic, and I'm going to be talking about if the show Game of Thrones is considered pornography or not. This week, Game of Thrones kicked off its 8th season, so there's always a lot of buzz when that happens. I believe I read it's the final season. A couple years ago, I guess 3 years ago now, 2016, I wrote an article for Covenant Eyes, and it was titled, "If You Are Watching Game of Thrones, You Are Watching Porn." And at the time, that article got a lot of shares and a lot of reads because Game of Thrones is an extremely popular show. These were stats from 2016 that there's 18.6 million people watching each episode, which is a HBO record. It's roughly the same population as the state of New York, which is America's 3rd largest state. So there's a lot of people. It's a lot of cultural influence, and I would not be surprised at all if that number has grown. And that's just the number watching each episode, right? So that is just a huge, huge, huge number of people. So Covenant Eyes, because of the kickoff of the new season this week, they reposted that old article this week on their social media. And so it got some new life to it. Because of that, I took their post and I reposted it. And because of that repost, I just said the word post a lot. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun word. Because of my repost, I got some feedback, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to talk specifically about 2 different responses I got. And it's interesting, I guess. Both of these responses are from Christian women who are in their 20s or thereabouts. And so the first one is a post, I guess you could say, of support of me and of what I wrote. I let the cat out of the bag. I do think Game of Thrones is pornography, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to go through kind of what some of the responses were, because it gives you a different idea of where different people are coming from on this subject. So this post is from Krista. It is a public post. It's on my Noah Filipiak author Facebook page. You're welcome to head over there and interact with Krista's comment as well as others who have commented there. And Krista writes, "Thank you for sharing this, Noah. I've been waiting for more leaders to speak some sense into this sad phenomenon. The number of believers I saw promoting this show yesterday has honestly left me rattled for their own souls and also for those that they are then influencing. There are lots of shows where I get there being some, quote, gray area, and we can agree to disagree or just agree that we have different interests and weaknesses, and it's okay to choose different entertainment. But this, when both Christians and non-Christians alike have shared that it contains explicit nudity and soft porn-like scenes, I am heartbroken." So that's one response. And then another, I'm going to leave anonymous because it was not posted publicly, but was sent to me on a message, Facebook Messenger. And it's from another woman, again, 20s or so, and a Christian. And she says, "Funny that I saw that tonight," speaking of my article, "because I just watched the premiere of this show with 3 Jesus-following adults, 2 of which are in full-time ministry like me, and one of them is recovering from a porn addiction. We spoke about this and had a good discussion. Here's the main points if you care at all. I'm sure you're getting tons of feedback, welcomed and unwelcomed. Only read if you care." I do care. I appreciate the feedback. Even if we disagree, that's fine. Okay, back to the message. All of us agree. It says, number 1, all of us agreed the sexual nature of the show is, all caps, not at all the driving force to watch it. We are all adults and endless mediums. We are all adults and have endless mediums to watch pornography. And this show would be a hilariously inefficient way to achieve that. It's a remarkable show. I'm sad for you that you've decided to refrain from a very entertaining story. Jesus loved stories. We are made to love good stories, right? That's in our DNA. Number 2, my friend recovering from some major post-porn issues said he actually loves that he is able to watch a show like this. When watching in a community, he is training his brain to see temptation, but move past it. You cannot stop from seeing temptation. If you call this show porn, the Victoria's Secret storefront is porn. Good luck not opening your eyes when you're pushing a stroller or corralling the kids at the mall. You will see temptation, but learning how to numb yourself to it is the most realistic and effective way to cope in today's world. Plus, watching it with friends promotes this even more. Number 3, and last. Being on a soapbox for anti-porn is painted as a masculine, quote, acceptable struggle for men. However, I encourage you to think through what your message is saying about women and their bodies. You are promoting a, quote, woe is me, I'm a perverted, lustful man who can't control myself. Women, you must cover yourselves to protect me from me, unquote. Remember, women's bodies aren't the issue. People with this struggle are the issue. The people with this struggle are the issue. Sorry. Modesty will not protect someone from lust, but modesty promotion will shame women. I know this post didn't really address this, and I'm not accusing you personally, but I have seen that so much from other anti-porn spokesmen in the Christian world. Feminism and anti-porn are so on the same page, but lean into liberation instead of shame. All right, there is a lot there. Before I unpack those two responses, particularly the second one, I want to read from. I know a lot of reading on a podcast probably isn't awesome, but I mean this I think is interesting stuff to read, right? So hopefully it's you're tracking with me. IMDb, for those of you that don't know, I think many do know, it's an extremely popular, well-read movie site. And not just movies, I should say TV shows. You know, you type in the TV show or the movie, and it tells you the actors in it and all this sort of interesting stuff about it. If you didn't know, there's a little section, and it is called a parent's guide. And for movies, it's very specific. It'll tell you, you know, how much sex and nudity is in a show. It'll give you kind of specific examples. And just as a side note, I use IMDb. I go there before I go to watch a movie, and if there's nudity in the movie, I just don't go watch it. Also, this is random, but just so you know, there is I guess it's software. I don't know if it's a product though, subscription product. It's about $8 or $10 a month. It's called VidAngel. If you're listening, I do like to promote VidAngel. VidAngel, you can, not any show and movie, but they have a ton of shows and movies, most of them, and they actually edit out the nudity scenes, sex scenes, anything you choose. You can edit as much or as little as you want. Some people like editing out swear words and violence because of, you know, yourself or for your kids or whatever. So my commercial, you can do 30 days of VidAngel for free if you go to noahfilipiak.com/VidAngel. Okay, commercial over. Back to IMDb. Go to the parent's guide on any of these shows. And IMDb, it's not focused on the family, right? It's not plugged in magazine. This is just telling you, you know, what's in a show or a movie. And the shows, it's a little more general because there's so many episodes. They're not outlining each episode. So there's just one paragraph here, sex and nudity for Game of Thrones. And IMDb says this: sex is a driving force of this series. Speaking of Game of Thrones. Sex is a driving force of this series, and nudity occurs throughout each season, including instances of exposed breasts, buttocks, and genitals, both male, penis, pubic hair, and female, pubic hair, though female full frontal is typically obscured by lighting and camera angles. I like that it typically is obscured. Not always. Viewers can expect to see and hear sex scenes, many of which take place in a brothel. There are also several scenes and situations of rape. So that's IMDb. And if you go over to VidAngel, I am not going to get deep into this one because some of these descriptions, I know for some of you listening, these descriptions themselves can be triggers, right? These are the descriptions that tell you what's in the scene so that you can choose if you want to filter that scene out, right, before you watch the show. So this is from season 8, episode 1, the season or the episode that just hit screens that the 18 million people watched or whatever this last weekend. It divides up in all these categories, but under sex scenes shown with nudity, one of them is 3. And I guess if triggers are a real, I don't think this will be a problem for you, but if they're a real problem, you could just skip ahead maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds or 45 seconds, and you won't hear me read these. So one of the scenes, 3 fully nude women are shown as one has sex with a man and 2 lie beside him. And then 2 fully nude women are shown as a man pushes one woman off of him. So that was this last episode. If you can go all the way back to the first episode, and in that episode there are 34 scenes with nudity in them. 35 it looks like, and 29 of those are female nudity. And I don't know how long an episode of Game of Thrones is, but 35 different scenes with nudity in them. That's pretty incredible. For the first episode, right, of the show ever. And so, okay, there's that. Let's get back to... Well, before I jump back into the messages that were sent, I want to reference another article I did, and I'll put these in the show notes of the podcast. And this was just really about one quote that I found about Game of Thrones. And so Game of Thrones has different directors, I guess, throughout the seasons. One of the directors' name is Neil Marshall. He's being interviewed on an Empire.com podcast, and he's talking about one of the producers. So basically talking about this idea that producers know what sells, right? So producers, they're putting money into the show. They are making sure this show makes money. And this is what the director says. Quote, "This particular exec, took me to one side and said, 'Look, I represent the pervert side of the audience, okay? Everybody else is this serious drama side. I represent the perv side of the audience, and I want full frontal nudity in this scene, so you go ahead and do it.' End of quote." And if you listen to the interview, this is followed by chuckles and laughs shared between the director Marshall and the podcast host, who are both men. Now, oh man, what are we gonna do here? First and foremost, when you read Krista's response as well as the response from the message, the message that was sent, I think it's important to know that, for one, we're talking about different definitions of pornography here. I think that some people consider pornography only to be a pornographic video where two people are having sex and it's being showed, like actual sex, not acting. And if that were the case, and I don't say this to toot my own horn, as you know, a big part of my testimony, my book, and all these things is overcoming a pornography addiction. But if that were the case, I've never looked at pornography. I don't think I've ever actually looked at a pornographic video of people actually having sex. I'm not saying that as a better or worse thing. What I'm saying is there is a much wider definition of what pornography is. And people use definitions like hardcore pornography, softcore pornography, and all these sorts of things. And the point is, pornography, it's things that, well, and I'm not saying you have to agree to my definition of pornography, but I'm saying for me, as someone who's overcome a pornography addiction, helps men, I don't want to say for a living, it's not the only thing I do, I'm a pastor, but I lead groups of guys through my book, Beyond the Battle, and I'm going on my, I think 12th group or something like that, of these guys. And pornography is anything that teaches you to objectify women. And so, yeah, the Victoria's Secret in the mall, I'm not going to say is pornography the way a, actual pornographic video is pornography. But I can tell you that when I was in middle school, high school, and in a pornography addiction, if I was able to get my hands on a Victoria's Secret catalog, that was all I needed. I mean, that was my pornography, and I would look at it and masturbate and lust. And if you think I'm the only guy, I mean, that would do that, that's laughable. I mean, the amount of guys who got started on pornography with, any kind of bra and panty ad, but alone. And again, I'm not saying that's pornography. Like, let's shame the women that do bra and panty ads. Obviously, I'm viewing that ad in a way that the ad certainly wasn't the intent. But that is different, I think, than Victoria's Secret, which they their ads and campaigns and the way they set themselves up is I'm not saying they set themselves up so that, you know, teenage boys lust over their stuff, but part of their draw is the seduction part of it. It is the it goes well above and beyond the department store, right? Bra and panty ads. Trust me, it's that and the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. These are extremely seductive, extremely provocative, extremely sexual in the way that they're communicated. So, but back to this idea of the definition of what pornography is. I'm not saying Game of Thrones is hardcore pornography, that these people are actually having sex and it's like the X-rated movie that you'd pick up at the dirty, you know, corner store or whatever. If that's your definition of pornography, it's just not a helpful definition, because while certainly people struggle with that sort of stuff, the amount of stimulus that's out there for men and for women is just so far beyond that it's hard to put even into words. So when I use the word pornography, I'm using it in a much more a much broader, right? A much more general sort of way. So here's what I want to do is kind of walk through this message that was sent to me. And let's just start with number one, that the sexual nature of the show is not at all the driving force to watch it. And I would say, and let me say this too. Men and women are different. Men and women are different when it comes to sexual sin, sexual stimulus. I'm not saying all men are the same, and I'm not saying all women are the same. One of the frustrating things about our current cultural climate is it can be hard to even talk about anything relating to men and women without getting just crucified and impaled by somebody. But when it comes, look, I work with men that are trying to be pure, right? I'm working with men who, when a woman walks by, whether that's attractive, we'll just say that it doesn't have to be someone dressed in a provocative way, just someone who's attractive and is just maybe wearing nice fitting clothes or whatever. Men that don't want their eyes to go straight to her breast or her butt, right? Whether they're single or married guys, that these are Christian guys saying, I don't want to objectify her when she walks by. I don't want thoughts of her in my mind. Oh, I'd like to be with her. What would it be like to be with her? I want her. These are these automatic autopilot responses. And I'm not saying that all men are wired the same, but I will say that there is a trend in men where we are very, very visually stimulated. And it doesn't matter if as a guy, and the reason I say this between men and women, I had a conversation with a woman at my church. This was a few years ago. She had recommended this movie for, you know, my wife and I to watch. And I said, well, is there any nudity in it? And she said, yeah, there's some, but it's kind of da-da-da, and it's done in this sort of like funny way and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I can't. Like, I just know I can't watch anything that has nudity in it. And she it was helpful. You know, she explained to me, she said, you know, for me as a woman, like, that just doesn't do anything for me. Like, and I think it was, you know, female nudity, and that just doesn't, I'm just not visually stimulated in that sort of way. And I said, you know, I see there's a difference, right? Like, I'm not going to judge her that she watched that movie. But at the same time, like, she's got to know you can't like recommend that movie to a guy, and because a guy's going to look at that scene very differently than that woman is, right? From that perspective. And so it doesn't have to be the driving force to watch it. This first point, that this show would be a hilariously inefficient way to achieve if you wanted to watch pornography. If you read my article, that's not the point of my article at all. In fact, the point of my article is, if you look at what Satan does, I mean, he's going to take pornographic images, right? Let's just say that. Okay, that's how I'm sort of defining. You have all of this nudity and sex in Game of Thrones. These are pornographic images, and the enemy surrounds them with other things that you would want to watch. Great drama, great stories, great, all these things. I mean, yeah, Jesus loves stories too, but when he told the story of, I don't know, if Jesus were telling the story of David and Bathsheba, he's not going to have a woman actress from the crowd get naked in front of everybody that he's teaching, and then have a man from the crowd come out and act, they're actors and act like he was David, and the woman act like they're Bathsheba, and say, hey guys, have sex in front of everybody naked, and just make it as over the top as possible, and we'll, watch you do this as I'm telling you this amazing dramatic story. He wouldn't do that at all, and that's what Game of Thrones does. It might be a great story and a great drama, and there might even be redemptive elements to it, but what Satan's doing is he's taking these extremely visually stimulating scenes and he's putting them in there, so men are going to the show, and yeah, it's great because it doesn't feel like you're watching porn. It doesn't have maybe the stigma to it, and yet your flesh is still getting those things that it wants, even if that wasn't your number one, reason for going it. It doesn't have to be your number one reason for going it. The second point about my friend is recovering from some major post-porn issues, and he said he actually loves that he's able to watch a show like this when he's in community. He's training his brain to see temptation and move past it. I mean, I would say, in my experience, which is pretty extensive when it comes to helping men with post-porn issues, okay? Your friend is probably lying to you. I mean, first of all, most men aren't going to be completely truthful to a woman about their sexual sin that they struggle with, right? They're just not. I mean, and so I just think this is where these are breakdowns that happen. So I say this humbly, and so I'll start with this. As a man, I need to be careful in trying to teach women about their sexuality and about their sexual sin struggles, because I'm not a woman, and I don't know what it's like to struggle the way a woman struggles, because that struggle is different than mine. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm an expert on women and their struggles with sex and in that area. I can say some things scripturally that could help and those sorts of things, but it would be presumptuous of me and dangerous for them if I were to say, here's the blueprint for you as a woman. And I can think of a few examples off the top of my head. Books that I've read, some talks that I've heard, and I would say that this message would be included in there, where for women, especially women, those of you that are in Christian leadership, that are in ministry, and you're leading men and women, I would just be very careful not to make assumptions about men's sexual sin and sexuality, because it is not. My friend with that one movie, she can watch those scenes and it doesn't affect her, and so her auto response is, well, this doesn't affect anyone then. And we do that a lot, like, well, I'm not tempted by same-sex attraction, so why should anyone else? And why should anyone else be tempted by that? And then I could preach a whole sermon on why should anybody be tempted by that? I mean, that's just, come on, it's obvious. And like, no, that'd be a terrible sermon. You'd be really harming men and women who struggle with same-sex attraction. And so that's just an analogy to this. Men, I laugh because what I want to say is this. If men tell you they can watch those scenes and it doesn't, quote, affect them, they are just lying to you. Every single one of them. Now, my bias would be bleeding in there of my own struggles and the struggles of now, hundreds and hundreds of men that I have helped through this issue over the years. But there is a point there. I would not be surprised. I would bet money that your friend masturbated that night. And I would bet money that those images were in his mind. And I would bet money that those images are still in his mind. And he's going to be able to draw them up whenever he wants, whether he wants to or not. And I bet money if you, as this Christian woman in ministry, were to ask him about that, hey friend, did you masturbate after watching Game of Thrones, later? He's not going to be honest with you because, I mean, I don't think I have to explain why he's just not going to be honest with you. He's going to put on this front like, nah, I'm good. I mean, I'm so glad that I could. I mean, it's just sad. It breaks my heart. And so, the Victoria's Secret thing with the storefront, yeah, I know it's there. I intentionally don't look at the storefront. In fact, at the Okemos Mall here in the Lansing area, Victoria's Secret is right next to the kids' little play area. And we'll go to the little indoor kids' play area with all the, things from the climb on and stuff. And it's literally right there. Like, I can sit with my back to it, or if it's in my field of view, I just choose not to look at it. And if one of those images gets into my line of sight, then I have to put my brain and my rewiring onto overdrive. I don't stare at this, 50-foot picture of a woman's breast, barely covered up with some lace, that's staring at me from the thing. I don't look at it and say, man, I'm so glad that that doesn't make me sin anymore. And I'm no, if it gets into my field of view, I look away and I tell myself, that woman is somebody's daughter and that woman is full of dignity, and I'm not going to objectify her. I'm not going to turn her into an object. I'm not going to degrade her in that way. And I do that, but it's not something that I want. Like, I don't want to put myself in that situation. It's not an easy, it's not like walking by a bank and being like, man, there's a lot of money in there I'd like to have. No, I'm good. Like, that's somebody else's money. I'm just going to keep walking. I'm not going to go in there and try to rob that bank. It's not like that. It's so much harder. And to say like that I should intentionally like put myself in that situation. I'm going to watch Game of Thrones just to test myself or something. I mean, oh my goodness, it's just, here's the other thing. I don't know if your friend's married or not, or if he's going to be married someday, but if I'm watching Game of Thrones and you can say all you want about how you were tempted and able to, I forget exactly how it was worded, where to go. Training his brain to see temptation, but move past it. I mean, I don't even know what that means when it comes to watching these scenes in Game of Thrones. I mean, these are graphic sex scenes and nudity scenes. And so how do you move past it when you go to have sex with your wife and you're like, why don't you look like the woman in Game of Thrones? I mean, she's shaped like X and you're shaped like Y. I mean, she looks like this and you look like that. And you can, how do you not become conditioned when you put a certain type of naked woman in front of you over and over and over again, and it's the Hollywood type over and over and over again? How does that not affect your definition of beauty and attraction and the standard that you then expect your wife to live up to? It's going to have an effect on you. We are products of what we are conditioned by, and that conditions us to see women, to be attracted to women that are a certain shape, and to see women a certain way, and to have certain standards. And it's a standard that no real woman in real life can live up to. And so I just, yeah, I think I've said enough there. I would, I feel for, I guess I feel for those guys that think they can deceive themselves in that way. And it doesn't mean, maybe he didn't masturbate, maybe he didn't, but that image is still in his mind. I'm going to give you an example where I was just talking to a friend, a guy, and he works in the medical field, and he goes to, different hospitals and stuff. And he's like tempted to look at nurses, they're pretty, some of them. And he's like, I'm starting to notice the other guys that work at these hospitals, and how like blatant it is when this like pretty nurse walks by. There'll be three of these guys, and they all just like, whether stare at her butt or whatever. And like, it's just as, and he's like, as I'm starting to realize, like, that's what I'm doing. And I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be that, type of guy, but that's my autopilot. And I'm so conditioned, to do that. And how did that guy get conditioned to do that? How did he get conditioned to do that? This is a Christian guy. He's not looking at pornography anymore. And yet his autopilot, when he sees a pretty nurse, is to check out her body. His eyes just immediately go to her body parts, these sorts of things. You get conditioned that way because of shows like Game of Thrones. You get conditioned that way because of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. You get conditioned that way because of all the porn you looked at growing up, whether it was hardcore or softcore. You get conditioned because you get programmed that that's what women's body parts are for. They're for me to gaze at and consume and lust and fantasize and masturbate over. And we are conditioning ourselves when we see these images. I mean, and so we get to choose, how will I condition myself? Will I be someone that conditions myself to see women that way or not to? And the third point in the message I really appreciate, and I think it's really important that we talk about this conversation about modesty and about shame. But I see what's happened in our culture is oh man, I hate this about our culture. We are such like pendulum swingers, right? So let's say, talking about modesty in the church, for example, it has shamed women to feel like, well, there's something wrong with me. Like, I need to cover up because there's something wrong with me. And it's a very valid point, and I'm very appreciative of that point being brought up. And so what we do is we swing the pendulum the whole way to the other side, where we almost mock, and we mock the idea that if modesty is ever talked about, or this extreme idea, and there's some pretty extreme statements in this email. I'm trying to dig through it here. Sorry. Remember, the women's bodies aren't the issue. People with this struggle are the issue. I think there's a lot of naivety there. People with this struggle are the issue. I don't know what percentage of men I would say are people with this struggle. I'd go 99. Yeah, I'd go 99% of men are people with this issue. And there's a lot of shame in that statement too, right? Like, if you're a guy and you don't want to look, like, you don't want to look at the nurse's body when she walks by. You just want to, think about your wife, and you want to see this woman with dignity and look at her in the eyes. But your eyes just automatically go to her body. You're the issue. Right? And look, that's a sin and you got to deal with it, right? But to just say you're the issue, it's not a blame game. It's certainly not the nurse's fault. She's not wearing something provocative or anything like that. It's not. And so it's one of these both and. It's not an either or. We just want to blame people so bad in our culture, and I think it's just gotten worse. The political dialogue has trained us to be this way. It's always our camp is this and that camp is that, and we blame that. And it doesn't have to be that way when it comes to pornography. And again, I'm using a wide definition of pornography. And I was saying a follow-up message with this person, they brought up like pornography. Their definition of pornography is essentially like where women are forced into it, like sex trafficking, and they're forced to do pornography and these sorts of things. And then some women do sort of choose that, and that's a different conversation and those sorts of things. And that there's many layers to this and nuances to it, but that's a very narrow definition of pornography. And what I'm talking about is if you took one of these scenes from Game of Thrones and you just clipped the scene out, you took a screenshot of the scene itself, of somebody having sex, of some orgasm or some whatever, and you just pluck that out and you put that in front of your teenage son, and you're the mom, and that teenage son, was looking at that, you wouldn't call that pornography? You wouldn't have any concerns at all about them? Or if that teenager becomes 20 and they're in college and they're just looking at that scene, and like but with that, it's not about there's nothing here about modesty. Like this isn't about like, oh, women, you should cover yourselves up. This is like sex. This is fully naked people, and it's extremely seductive, and it's not accidental. Here's the other thing. IMDb says that this show that sex is a driving force of this series. It's a driving force. The producer of the show is telling the director, you will put full frontal nudity in this scene because I represent the perv side of the audience. And this is what I want, so you're going to go ahead and do it. This isn't about women need to, cover up because it's their fault. And I had someone write me a message that was along these lines and said a naked woman ought to be able to be, fully in front of a man, and he's not gonna, lust over her. And if he does, it's his fault, not hers. And you could look at that and say, well, I guess it depends, right? In the context, if you're talking about you're in real life, and let's say you're an EMT and you're a first responder, and there's like this naked woman sprawled on the ground, unconscious or dying or something, like she was trying to get in the shower and had a heart attack or whatever. And yeah, I mean, if you're a guy and you're lusting over that and you have an erection and, it's like, yeah, then that's definitely on you, like, and there's context to these things. And there's lots of middle contexts, but if that naked woman is on a screen and is extremely seductive and is just like, I don't want to be graphic here because I'm not trying to trigger anyone, but there's so much seduction there. and sexual, and to say to the guy, it's your fault if you lust over that image. I mean, I'm trying to come up with words here that don't just sound like what I want to say is like, what planet are you living on? Like, what? How do you think that that's any kind of good idea to do that? And then to say that that woman isn't morally culpable at all? Like, there's not any sense of moral culpability here. And it certainly could go the other direction if it was a naked man. And it was, I mean, there's women that look at pornography. It's not as prevalent. Women aren't as visually stimulated in general. This isn't just about shaming women. It's about saying if you're putting yourself out there in a sexual, visually stimulating, provocative way, and that's what you're, there's some moral culpability there before the Lord. I don't see. But the point that's not the point at all. It isn't to shame that person. The point is simply saying this has to stop on both ends. Like, there never should be a Game of Thrones. It never should be okay to just fill the minds of 18 million people each episode with this idea that sex is about consuming another person. And for some of you, you can see that and it has no problem on you. It's like walking by a bank that has the door unlocked and open and you can see the money in there and you're just like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to keep walking. But for lots of people, for lots of different reasons and different wirings, it's a huge issue. And they're going to walk into the bank and they're going to take the money. And then for us to sit around and say, one, I can't believe they went in there and took that money. How could they? They are the issue. Oh, man, I mean, I want to minister to that person, but I also want to minister to the person. I mean, the bank analogy, I guess, kind of falls apart at that point, but I was thinking the person who left the money, just there to be taken by anybody. That money shouldn't be taken by anybody. That money is somebody's. And it's the same with a naked woman's body or a naked man's body. That body isn't meant to be taken by just anybody. That body is sacred. And I want that woman to know that her body is sacred. And for a man to know that his body is sacred and it's not meant to be taken by just anybody. It's meant to be used in intimacy with a lifelong commitment of marriage undergirding that intimacy. And I think we can have those conversations and do that without shaming anyone. And if women are feeling shamed by the way anti-porn is being talked about, then those talking about anti-porn like me, we need to be careful. We need to change the way we talk about that. And that's why I really do appreciate this type of feedback, but it can't just be this polarizing extreme. It just can't be that. And so what I wanted to do with this episode is just kind of give you some of the different perspectives that are out there, including mine, right? Including my perspective. And if you want to interact with me, please do. You can email me, podcast@beyondthebattle.net. You can hop on to, I'll leave that thread on my author Facebook page. It's Noah Flipiak, author. You can jump on there and give your 2 cents about Game of Thrones. But, man, I'll tell you this. I don't watch sex and nudity in any show. And I am shocked that Christian guys let themselves do that. And I just think, like, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself and ask yourself, or try to convince yourself that you don't get any turn on by seeing that naked woman in front of you, or that image doesn't stick in your mind. It doesn't even have to be a naked woman. I mean, we're talking about, like, this is just me, and I'm going to be right up in front and tell you, I have issues. Hello? Like, so do you. We all have different issues, but this fake idea that I'm okay, I'm good, I don't have any problems, nothing can take me down, that is bull crap. I mean, I'm telling you right now, for me, there's a lot of shows that I won't watch. They have zero visual stimulus in them. They're just sitcoms. They're on ABC, CBS, and the reason I won't watch them, it's not for any kind of legalism or anything like that. It's because in my marriage, I write about this in Beyond the Battle, 3 years into my marriage, I wanted a divorce because I wanted to go be promiscuous the way my non-Christian friends in high school were promiscuous, and the way I saw people in, at Michigan State University where I live. And at the time I was in my early 20s, married, and I'm like, man, this promiscuous life, it sure seems way better. And you have these women worshiping you all the time, and the flirtation, it's intoxicating. It's like being worshiped, and these shows that make that so normal, that sort of casual, fun sex, it just made me want it. It made me want that sort of casual, fun sex. And I was like, I'm being conditioned that casual, fun sex is casual and fun. And so I'm just not going to let myself be conditioned in that way. And we just have to be brutally honest with ourselves when it comes to that. And if I miss some good stories, I think I'll be okay. Right? Yeah, like I think on my 50th wedding anniversary, I'll be like, yeah, I think it was worth it, right? I mean, it's crazy to think that I was going to leave my wife because I wanted that lifestyle. And not everybody's that way. Not everybody has the same issues that I have, but a lot of people do. And there's a reason around half of marriages end in divorce. There's a reason people are always running off with other people and having affairs and all this sort of thing. And so, man, guys and ladies as well. But I can talk just real, like, man to man with guys because I know how you tick. It's not just me. I counsel men on this subject all the time. Be honest with yourself. Don't be stupid. Like Proverbs, it's either 6 or 7 talks about, can a man scoop coals in his lap without being burned? No, like you don't be an idiot. Don't, I mean, you'll be just fine. Trust me, if you miss out on the story. So, of the show or whatever it might be. So, all right, I'll leave that there. I hope that's helpful. I don't know. I'm not going to put Game of Thrones out of business. I'm not going to put the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition out of business. But I hope to help a few people that are on a journey like mine. And, it's just, and we just got to speak truth to this stuff and do it in a gracious way and in a way that really, we don't want to shame anybody. There's nothing good is going to come out of that. So love your feedback on that. If you want to share it, I'm all ears. So with that, I should do a, what's it called? A drop, a sound effect for like, this is now the most awkward transition in podcast history. And that would be the transition from what's my quite serious, spiritual topic into Noah's rant. But that's the part of the show that we're on right now. It's your favorite part of the show. It's your cat's favorite part of the show. And it's your goldfish's second favorite part of the show, Noah's rant.
Noah's rant.
So, how are you doing? How's it going? How'd you answer those questions? Have you noticed that how are you doing? It doesn't mean how are you doing. It literally in our language, you know how words switch meanings over time? How are you doing has completely switched meanings from how are you doing. What how are you doing means now, or how's it going means now, it really just means hello. In fact, you'll have people now, especially if you're like walking down the sidewalk, hey, how's it going? Hey, how you doing? That's the answer. Hey, how's it going? Hey, how you doing? Like, no, I asked you the question. You answer it. Don't ask me the question back. I think of those Bud Light commercials from back when I was growing up. The "What's up" commercials. I think that's what did it to us. Where it was like, I'm going to answer your "What's up" question with my "What's up" question. Now, "What's up" is a way better conversation starter than "How you doing" or "How's it going?" Here's why. All right. How you doing? And this is really true in the church as well. How you doing? The answer is always good. It's always good, or maybe fine. And here's what here's what happens. Someone will say, and here's the other thing about me, if you haven't picked up on this already, I am plagued with the curse of honesty. I am just a really honest person. I'm a really real person. I live in, and to the point that I would lean towards pessimism a little bit, because I think I'm trying to overcompensate for all of this, like, kind of ridiculous, not optimism is the wrong word. I'm trying to think of the word. It's just fakeness that's out there. I think that's what it is. I'm trying to make up for all of this fakeness that's out there. So someone says, "How you doing?" And you say, "I'm good." Okay, what good means, here's the translation for you. What good means is, I'm doing fine, or I just don't want to tell you, right? That's what good means. I'm doing fine, or I don't want to tell you. If somebody's actually doing good, they won't say I'm doing good. They'll say something like, "I'm doing amazing," and then they'll tell you about how they're doing. If someone says, "How you doing?" and the answer is fine, ooh, that is a red light, right? I have had people, oh man, there's this guy, and I saw him regularly. He used to go to my church. And he said, "How you doing?" And I'm really like an honest person. And if I'm not doing good, I don't really want to say that I'm doing good. And here's another thing. Like, I struggle with depression. And there's just, frankly, a lot of days I'm not doing good. It doesn't feel like I'm doing good. So I don't want to lie to you. I guess I just follow the 10 Commandments, right? Like, do not lie. So I would say, "I'm fine." And he would go, every time I said that, he'd go, "Just fine?" Like, with this concern in his voice, "Just fine?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm just fine. Here's the thing about it. If I typically just don't want to talk about it. Like, he'd be like, "Just fine." He would actually say, "What's wrong?" And I'm just trying to walk from, like, this end of the room over to where the garbage can is. And I don't really want to sit here and talk to you about my depression for the next 40 minutes. I'd kind of like to just get to the garbage can, throw my garbage away, and then move on to what I have to do next. It's particularly, if you're at church and you got like 5 minutes and you're running around here and you're running around there. "Hey, how you doing?" And then you have the person who says, and I'm going to offend some of you on this. Oh man, those amazing Christians who say, "Oh man, I'm blessed." And I get it. I get what you're trying to say. That just feels so cheesy to me. Like, "Man, I am blessed." Yeah, you are. You are. That's just me. You could pray for me, right? Pray for me. Pray for me that's how I think. But the rant really should go like this. We need to stop saying, "How are you doing?" Because and the answer it's not, hey, don't ask somebody how they're doing unless you really care. Unless you really are going to sit there and listen. No, like, who's to say that when you're drinking coffee in the atrium that it's the time that, like, you're going to sit there and you have 2 minutes and someone's going to tell you about, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh man, I watched Game of Thrones this week because these ministry leaders at our church are watching it and they said it was a great story, and I'm a recovering porn addict, and man, these scenes, man, I've been masturbating like ever since I watched them, and they asked me about it, and I just said, oh man, it's cool that like I can watch this in community and I can just see temptation and move past it, because I'm so full of shame of what those images really do, in my mind. And I've been depressed, and I just feel like crap before God because I've been like so free from porn, and now I'm back into it again because all these porn scenes in Game of Thrones, they just stick in my mind, and it's like I have all these porn images just accessible now from Game of Thrones, and man, that's how I'm doing, man. Yeah. And this coffee, man, is good too. Like, right? Are we getting Starbucks now? Like, this is fantastic, man. And are you gonna watch the Lions game today? How are you doing? Right? Like, that's just not how these like conversations happen in that 2-minute period of time. I would say, look, you can do. I love Noah's rant because, for one, let me tell you this before I got this guy. And he goes to the church I worked at when I was a youth pastor, when I was 21, 22, 23. And he's an older guy, 70s or 80s. I think 80s. I don't know if he's listening. Super wise, just really wise man. And he'll ask me, hey, how are you doing? And I'll say to him good or fine, because I'm going to tell you, I'm so conditioned, just like you are, to say good or fine, usually because I just don't want to have this big drawn out conversation with someone that I don't even know that well. That's the other thing. I don't even know you. I don't even know you that well. So I don't want to tell you all this stuff about what I'm struggling with. And so I'll say good or fine, and he'll say, are you really? And he's so sincere, like, are you really? He'll just stop and be like, hey, how you doing? I say, I'm good. Are you really doing good? And I have to really pause and say, sometimes I can say, yeah, I am. I'm doing good. And other times I'm like, man, no, I'm not. And you can pray for me, like, because I know him and I trust him, and I don't know if he does that to everybody or if he just does that to me, but I kind of love it. I think it's fantastic. So there you go. Stop using how are you doing as a greeting. It's not a greeting. Just say hello. I think what's up, I think is great, like, hey, what's going on? What's going on, man? That's great, because you can just like, this is what's going on. I'm just not much. I'm hanging out, I get it. It's just an icebreaker. Obviously, I'm just having fun with this, right? You can say that. It's fine. You can say it to me. It's fine. I'll just say good or fine, because that's what we do. It's part of our language now. Our language has morphed. But man, just start paying attention to that. And I sometime what you should do is, let me tell you this and then I'll stop. So I was having breakfast with a friend, and this is during this year of transition for me. It's been this crazy year. Like, I left the church that I planted after 13 years. I'm unemployed. In fact, at that moment, I was literally unemployed. Right now, I'm in this interim job, and it's just a lot of uncertainty going on. So I'm at breakfast, and a pastor friend of mine was at the same restaurant, and he came over to our table and was like, hey, and it's, decent friend of mine, hey, and he said, how are you doing? And I said, oh, bad. And he looked at me like, he looked at me like he just like sucked on a lemon or something, right? And he was like, what? Like, I said, yeah, I'm doing bad. I go, I'm unemployed, and I'm really struggling with insomnia right now. And he had no words. And I just joked with him because he's a pretty decent friend where I can like be sarcastic and stuff. And I go, what's wrong? Can't you handle a little Christian, authenticity and vulnerability? And he laughed, and he was like, oh man, I'm just not used to people actually being honest with me. So all that to say, I do think there's a major like fake problem in the church where we just fake it, and we don't tell the truth, and we put on this front. And some of that Game of Thrones stuff, I'll throw that crap right in there. Like, these guys who are like, I can handle this and blah, blah, blah. Like, we just fake it. We're not real. We're not honest. And so the Noah's rant, this is just meant to be funny, but I do think it does shadow onto a bigger problem that, like, yeah, we don't we're always good and fine, and that is fine. I don't really like. I'm going to tell you I'm good and fine because I don't want to explain it all to you. But we do need people to be that we can be real with, right? Like we need friends, we need a spouse, we need close people in our lives, and more than just your spouse, people outside of your spouse. We need close friends, whether it's a pastor or just someone you can really confide in, that you can truly tell them, how are you doing? And those people are very rare. And so I hope that you have those people in your life. And that is the end of Noah's rant. The world is a better place now. People will stop saying, how's it going? And how are you doing? That's it. That's a wrap for episode 6. I'd love to hear from you. Podcast at beyondthebattle.net. If you like the Flip Side podcast, I would love it if you told people that you liked it. Maybe share this link on your social media pages. That would be fantastic. Until next time, I will see you on the flip side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals, wonder what I do. Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly's to them Tom Hanks, Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they jacket my inner reverence, stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the pavement leading to heaven. Yo, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake, see the green around their belly. Taking refuge in his hands, see his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished, it's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty, so why the beauty pageants? And caught up in emotions and following your passions. Talking that freedom, all people need them more than that Easter. Or coffee shop discussions, debating over baristas. Please, sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit, put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what